One of their extensively documented discoveries involves an intriguing object resting on the Baltic Sea floor. Referred to as the Baltic Sea Anomaly, this underwater structure gained widespread attention due to its peculiar appearance, notably resembling a disc-shaped aircraft. In June 2011, beneath the icy depths of the Gulf of Bothnia, the OceanX exploration team encountered an object that nature alone could never have fashioned. A massive, rounded stone formation rose from the seabed, its surface bearing unmistakable signs of intense thermal alteration. Strange markings covered it, accompanied by unusually sharp geometric edges that defied ordinary geological explanation. After more than a decade of meticulous investigation, specialists have at last revealed the truth behind the Baltic Sea Anomaly. Their conclusions point towards something profoundly unsettling, a geological signal that by every conventional understanding simply should not exist: the scar upon the seafloor. It begins with the brutal physical devastation etched into the seabed. When side-scan sonar first mapped the terrain in the northern Baltic Sea, researchers fixated not on the rounded central form, but on the colossal furrow stretching behind it. The imagery revealed a trench some 300 meters long, ripping through the bottom sediments and pointing directly to where the enigmatic object had come to rest. This mark shattered the profound silence of the deep. The Baltic seafloor is a realm of constant change, shaped by subsurface currents and relentless sand migration over centuries. In such a dynamic ecosystem, any trace left on the sandy bed, whether from a fishing net or an anchor, vanishes or becomes buried by natural deposition in short order. Yet this furrow endures. It remains deep and crisp, with ridges of displaced material shoved to either side and piled at the terminus. The stubborn persistence of this runway compels any observer to confront a violent physical event. Something solid, immensely heavy, and carrying tremendous kinetic energy did not drift or emerge from below. It plowed across the geology and halted, defying the ocean's relentless erasure. The object's position only heightens the scene's absurdity. The Gulf of Bothnia rests upon one of the planet's most stable continental shields, free from active tectonic faults or submarine volcanoes capable of erupting fresh lava flows. No inherent geological process in this region can account for a gigantic, independent mass positioned at the end of such an extended slide path. Had this been a natural boulder transported by the last ice age glaciers, the evidence would show chaotic, random abrasion rather than a perfectly straight trajectory ending in precise arrest. The presence of the object at the furrow's conclusion resembles an alien intruder hurled into an otherwise seamless canvas. It stands utterly detached from its surroundings, displaying no geological continuity with the seabed it presses upon. The entire physical context of the area, from the flatness of the floor to the stability of the continental shelf, screams that this does not belong. It is an interloper. And if nature cannot forge and preserve such a prolonged slide mark through millennia of sedimentation, then what extraordinary density, weight, and hardness must this terminal mass possess to resist the ocean's crushing burden and the relentless gnawing of time? The invisible wall. Once the coordinates of that gigantic scar were locked in, the OceanX expedition returned, equipped with more advanced technology, determined to unravel the true nature of the mass at the furrow's end. Yet as their vessel drew near, a fresh barrier emerged, not from visible nature, but from invisible physical responses. An apparent wall of energy seemed to envelop the site, thwarting every attempt at detailed human observation. At a safe distance, instruments functioned without issue, but the moment the ship entered a 200-meter radius from the object's center, electronic systems began to fail. Satellite phones lost signal, navigation lights flickered and died, and most critically, the high-resolution sonar, the only means of piercing the murky water, suffered severe disruption. Screens filled with blinding white noise instead of clear seabed images. This was no isolated glitch. The entire onboard electronic suite collapsed in unison. Experts aboard attempted restarts, all in vain. More unsettling than the failures themselves was their strict regularity. Retreat beyond 200 meters and normal operation resumed. Phones regained connection. Cameras recorded once more. Sonar swept the floor cleanly. Advance again, and the malfunctions returned with eerie precision. Such behavior suggests the object below is far more than an inert stone lying dormant, basalt or sedimentary rock. Even if rich in iron or magnetic minerals might merely deflect a compass, it could not generate a field potent enough to interfere with digital circuitry or drain modern device batteries. This environmental resistance imposed a profound psychological strain on those present. The inability to gather remote data only deepened the object's aura of mystery and menace. It appeared some physical mechanism, perhaps magnetic fields, radiation, or an unidentified energy form actively surrounded the mass, establishing a technology forbidden zone. The anomaly seemed to reject scanning, photography, or identification by machines. Humanity's most sophisticated tools had been rendered blind in its presence. Technological defeat forced the expedition to its most primal boundary. No choice remained but to revert to the oldest methods. If acoustic waves and electromagnetic signals could not penetrate the interference veil, then only human sight and touch would suffice. They had to abandon the vessel's safety, descend 90 meters into pitch-black cold that bites to the bone, and confront it face to face. Machines had failed to define the object from afar. Could naked human eyes perceive what sensors had missed? Or would divers too be deceived by whatever waited in the darkness below? Touching the darkness. The failure of remote sensors had pushed the situation to a point of no return. Humans were compelled to make direct physical contact with the object to verify its existence. When the remotely operated vehicle, known as ROV, was lowered into the thick black waters of the Baltic Sea, it carried the sole hope that its powerful floodlights could pierce through the murky sediment and the eternal night at a depth of 90 meters. Yet light did not travel far here. It was swallowed by the water's opacity, transforming the surrounding space into a narrow visual tunnel where observers could only see 1 square meter at a time. The ROV glided through the darkness, and then the seafloor shifted. From the soft, shapeless mud typical of ocean bottoms, the camera began to capture a transition to an entirely different surface. No longer was it flowing sand or loose sediment. The robot was moving over something hard, solid, and cold. As the lights swept across, the images transmitted back to the control screens revealed not a smooth pebble worn by currents, nor the chaotic, sharp edges of shattered rock. The object's surface appeared with a strangely complex texture. It was rough and pitted, yet tightly cohesive, like a unified mass that had undergone a violent transformation. The moment the robot's arm extended and gripped a protrusion on the surface, physical reality asserted itself harshly. The pressure sensors on the mechanical arm reported a hardness far exceeding ordinary sedimentary rock. It did not crumble or yield. It lay there, inert and unyielding, like a fortress beneath the waves. The flickering images, pieced together, showed a non-uniform structure. Some areas bulged out, others dipped in, following unclear patterns that diverged from nature's randomness. But the most troubling aspect was not its solidity, but what the lights revealed about the surface's condition. It resembled material altered by heat. There were dark, blackened patches, fine cracks running like overfired pottery, and sections that seemed to have once been liquid before solidifying instantly. The robot had confirmed this is a solid object, but what did the detailed structure of that mass look like in full view? Were these rough patches merely a shell for hidden order beneath, or was the entire mass a remnant of chaos? To answer, humans could not rely on cameras alone. They had to descend. The geometry of the absurd. When professional divers, equipped with special breathing gas mixtures to withstand the immense pressure, finally approached the object's surface, they carried expectations of finding a bizarre natural rock formation, but their handheld flashlights, sweeping across the thin layer of sediment covering the surface, illuminated a scene that defied all visual logic and shattered any hypothesis of geological origin. What met their eyes was not the gentle curves of erosion, but the cold precision of geometry. They discovered straight walls, smooth and sheer, rising at a perfect 90-degree angle from the base. They swam along narrow corridors where parallel planes extended and met at flawless right angles, a feature nature never produces. In the natural world, water and sand erosion always tends to round edges. No ocean current on Earth could carve a sharp right angle and preserve it for thousands of years. But the most shocking detail, the one that served as the breaking point for the entire expedition's perception, was a specific structure on the top of the object, a perfect circular hole surrounded by a raised square rim. It resembled a window frame or a reinforced hatch that had petrified. A circle, centered precisely within a square, was undeniable evidence of intentional design.
Geology offered no mechanism to explain how natural rock could arrange itself into interlocking Euclidean shapes like this. The contradiction grew horrific as the divers touched these geometric structures. Their sense of touch confirmed a rough, pitted surface like scorched concrete or raw volcanic rock. Their eyes saw architecture with straight lines, right angles, frames, yet their hands felt burned stone. These two facts clashed violently in their minds. A human-made structure is typically crafted from smooth metal or composite materials. A natural boulder is rough but lacks this form. This object was a grotesque fusion of both. An intelligent design imprisoned in the material of destruction. Who or what could sculpt such right angles, and what flame had seared them into stone without obliterating their shape? The paradox of fire and stone. Samples chiseled from those walls and window-like frames were hauled to the surface, carrying the hope that laboratory analysis would deliver a rational explanation. Instead, the results of petrographic examination drove human understanding into a scientific dead end. The samples were identified as basalt, a type of igneous rock formed only when molten volcanic lava cools and solidifies. This conclusion immediately collided with an insurmountable geographical barrier. The Baltic Sea rests upon an ancient and extremely stable continental shield. No volcanic activity has occurred here for tens of millions of years, and certainly no volcano erupted at this precise location to produce that enormous basalt mass in place. The presence of basalt here is as absurd as discovering a permanent iceberg in the heart of the Sahara Desert. It does not belong to the geological history of these waters. Furthermore, the crystal structure of the rock samples viewed under an electron microscope told a far more violent story. The crystals displayed clear signs of having been subjected to extreme temperatures, thousands of degrees, followed by rapid cooling. As a last resort to preserve natural logic, the hypothesis of a meteorite impact was proposed. Yet this idea collapsed under the weight of the geometric evidence already uncovered. A meteorite plunging through the atmosphere at hypersonic speeds and striking the surface would explode, shatter, or melt into a chaotic glassy mass. The heat and kinetic energy of such an impact would obliterate any structural order. No meteorite could gently settle and leave behind square corridors, vertical walls, and perfectly rounded frames intact. We find ourselves trapped in an inescapable paradox. The material, scorched basalt, declares this to be the product of wild high heat and natural fury. Yet the shape, with its right angles and frames, insists this is the work of engineering and deliberate arrangement. In the physical world we understand, no natural process can simultaneously melt stone and sculpt it into precise geometry. Modern science has no name for an object that is at once geological and architectural, forged in infernal temperatures yet preserving the outlines of order. If nature did not create this, and prehistoric humans lacked the ability to melt and cast stone on the deep sea floor, then what exactly are we looking at? The corpse of technology. When every geological and physical impossibility is stripped away, what remains, however difficult to accept, must be considered as a new reality. We are not gazing upon an oddly shaped rock formed by chance. We stand before a corpse, not a biological corpse, but the corpse of technology. The object on the Baltic Sea floor stands as physical proof of an artificial structure, a machine, a construction, or a vehicle that once existed in complete form before enduring a thermonuclear catastrophe or some tremendous energy event. That heat melted its outer layers of metal, composite, or advanced synthetic material, altering molecular structures and fusing them with surrounding sediment to create the substance we now mistakenly classify as scorched basalt. This instantaneous petrification sealed its original form within an eternal stone shell. The right angles, the straight walls, the circular frames that the divers observed are the surviving structural skeleton faintly visible through the charred and mineralized flesh that once covered it. The truth is more disturbing than we imagined, and it does not lie in discovering an alien spacecraft or a remnant of Atlantis. The real horror rests in the realization that evidence of an advanced civilization, or at least a superior technological presence, has been staring us in the face. Disguised as ordinary geology, the ocean preserved it, yet it also concealed its true nature beneath a mask of nature itself. The Baltic anomaly compels humanity to confront a haunting question. How many undersea mountains, how many strange rock formations we have passed over are in reality the silent tombs of extinguished
technology from tens of thousands of years ago? We have searched for gleaming metal and flashing beacons, but perhaps all that remains of those great visitors from the past are scorched stones, bearing the faint imprint of intelligence, lying cold and still in eternal darkness. Amazing discoveries. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Share this video with friends and join the discussion on what these findings could mean. Your thoughts and questions are important, so let's explore incredible mysteries together.